All right, Neogenians, welcome to Dawn of the New Earth. Today, we're talking about something very important, the abyss. And this has to do with something that's at the very heart of your soul. And we're going to be talking about what the abyss is, how to cross it, how not to fall into it, and what it has to do with a hidden portion of your soul that has to do with secret knowledge. This is going to be really interesting as we continue to explore the Tree of Life, the Abyss, and the hidden Sephira known as Da'at. So that's what we're talking about today. It's going to be really good, very important information with regard to this. So we're going to get started right away here. Before we do, as always, hey, if you haven't become a member yet, please do. Now is a great time. It helps out the channel a lot. It's how I'm able to create my content and get it out there. So become a member. You can get access to my free downloads on inner transformation and alchemy. You can get access to our members only videos. And we're having a members only video right after this called, Was Christianity Actually a Roman Psyop? That's going to be a really good video. So check it out, become a member, it helps out a lot. I appreciate it. Links in the description. Also, if you haven't already, check out my books. If you like what we talk about on my channel with regard to self-transformation, I recommend starting with this one. It's actually the 5th book, but it's called Psychogenesis, Self and Universal Transformation. And this is all about how to self-actualize into the highest version of you, reach hyper-awareness, the highest form of consciousness, and introduces you to the concept of will forming, which is essentially about manifestation, giving form to what you will. So I recommend this, and follow me on Spotify. It's a great way to listen to this content and even watch this content because Spotify has video now. And so the links to all those things are in the comments, or not the comments, the descriptions of this video. Okay. So let's get started right away. Today, we're talking about Da'at and the Abyss. And this is something that's rarely explained clearly. But understanding what the Abyss is and what Da'at is incredibly important, because if you don't get this, you can completely lose your way without even knowing that you did. Okay? So we're going to jump right into this. And let me bring this on screen here. So last week, we talked about the Tree of Life. And last week, we essentially gave a description of every one of the Sephirot on the Tree of Life. However, there is in the center here, you'll see it's in a dotted line, one known as Da'at. And it's not always represented on the Tree of Life. Like on this one here, you can see it's not there. This is because it's not truly a Sephira. It's not truly one. I'm going to be explaining what it is, but it's incredibly important. It's sort of the key to all this. Now, last time, we talked about the Tree of Life in terms of the Sephirot and the flow of energy. So we talked about, sorry, I'm just noticing that my microphone is not in the best position. I really need to move my mic to the other side. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. So we talked about the flow of energy basically goes from Keter to Chokhmah, to Bina, to Chesed, to Gevurah, to Tiferet, to Netzach, to Chod, to Yesod, and then to Malkut. Now, what you'll notice is it forms a lightning bolt pattern as it goes down. And essentially, what you'll notice, though, is that, there's all these different paths connecting the Tree of Life, the different Sephirot on the Tree of Life. But you'll notice this one right here, there is no path from Binah to Chesed. So that's kind of a problem, because if you are raising your consciousness and going up the tree of life through these different paths, from here to here to here to here to here to here, then to here, well, then how are you going to get to from this plane here, from chesed, how are you going to get to binah? Because that's the next one that you would go to. There's no path going to it. So why is there no direct path between chesed and binah? That gap, that emptiness, that's the abyss. Okay? So you'll notice the abyss is sort of this big empty spot here, and the lack of a path from binah to chesed. And this is the supernal triad up here. These three sefirot are essentially the highest, most divine aspect of reality, the soul, and existence. So there is this big gap or abyss basically between us in our typical framework of understanding the mind and what's known as the supernals, the supernal triad, the divine aspect. So what we want to know is, how can we cross the abyss to and get to binah? All right? So the abyss is a great divide, and it represents a limitation. It separates the supernal triad, the divine aspect of reality, the transpersonal realms at the top, Keter, Chokhmah, and Binah, from the personal individual realms below. You can kind of think of it as like the difference between consciousness and the collective unconscious. And here's the thing. Normally, there's no way to cross that, because once you reach chesed, there's no way to get to binah. There's no path. You can't just will yourself over it or think your way through it. The abyss blocks the bridge from binah, which is understanding, unless something happens. Now, that something is da'at. And that is this portion right here. And so what happens when you have da'at, actually, let me get something that'll make this more clear. So I just want to show you guys a model of the tree of life that has da'at represented. I can't fit the whole thing on here because it's quite large. But you can see da'at is represented on this tree. If you were to look really closely, it's still in a dotted line. If you look real close, you can see that there's some empty spaces on the circumference. But you'll see now, with da'at over the abyss, a path opens up from chesed to binah. So now there is a path. So what is da'at? Well, the thing to understand, the reason why it's in a dotted line is because da'at isn't a sefirah in its own right. It's a state. What da'at is, and da'at means knowledge. Okay, so da'at means knowledge. And you'll notice that, so chokhmah is wisdom, binah is understanding, and da'at is knowledge. And each one of these plays a different role. So first of all, just what is da'at? Like I said, it's a state. It's not a sefirah in its own right. It's what happens when all 10 sefirot, both the upper and lower, come into alignment and integration. It's like a secret 11th Sefirah, but it isn't really. It's not its own sphere. It's what happens when all of the other Sefirah or Sefirot come into alignment and integration. It's the assimilation, integration, and cohesion of all the others together. In the Neogenian system, Da'at is what we call hyper-awareness. In terms of Gnosticism, it would be considered gnosis. But in both cases, it's the moment when wisdom, chokhmah, and understanding, binah, synthesize into something new, knowledge. Wisdom, understanding, and you'll see there's a line from here and here, synthesized together as knowledge. So you can think of Da'at as the integration of all 10 Sefirot, but specifically, it's the synthesis of Chokhmah and Binah into knowledge, which is what allows one to access the supernals. Now, this isn't just any kind of knowledge. It's not just intellectual knowledge. Not at all. This is direct experience of divinity and understanding at the same time. Remember that Chokhmah is wisdom, and it's just like information, but not ordered. And then Binah is how you can understand that wisdom in an ordered way. Da'at is the synthesis of both. So you can think of this as the logical mathematical form of reality, for example, and this as the direct experience of reality. Da'at is the synthesis of both. Both the formal understanding of reality and the experience of reality, synthesized in Da'at. And when that synthesis occurs, it's not that it's a synthesis of all the Sefirot, but specifically, most importantly, it's the synthesis of Chokhmah and Binah. So you see, it's not one in its own right. It's something that arises when you reach a higher state of consciousness. That's why in the Neogenian system, it's hyper-awareness. Because guess what? Some of you out there may have achieved hyper-awareness, but for those of you who haven't, you have the potential for hyper-awareness, but have not yet synthesized the wisdom and understanding necessary to truly step into that higher state of consciousness. So in other words, you have the potential for Da'at, for knowledge, but it's not there yet. That is why Da'at is not a true Sefirah in its own right. It's a synthesis that arises because of the integration of the others. But when this does happen, this integration, especially of Chokhmah and Binah, that's when a path appears. You can see there's clearly a path now across the abyss. So it's almost like the abyss sort of now allows you to cross. There's like a bridge. You can think of a bridge has now appeared, which allows you to have access to the divine realm, the understanding of reality, the wisdom, the experience of existence, the knowledge of unity. Because remember, Keter, the crown, Keter is unity. So through Da'at, you have access to all those. But here's the thing, and it's critical. Crossing the abyss is not a guaranteed success. It's extremely difficult. And many people fail. Because remember, the top 3 spheres are beyond individual ego. They reflect the collective unconscious. They reflect the universal aspects of reality. And if you try to cross the abyss via da'at, but you're still clinging to ego identification, you're going to fall hard right into the abyss. Now, remember, there's nothing wrong with the ego. The ego is incredibly important. It's critical. But you don't want to identify with the ego. It's not the whole of who you are. It's not you are the higher self. You are the inner star. So there's nothing wrong with the ego, but you don't want to identify with the ego. If you do, and you try to cross the abyss, even through da'at, you will fall into it. There's also another aspect where you can fall into the abyss, and that if wisdom and understanding haven't been properly integrated. If there are fractures or blind spots, da'at can turn on you. And in that case, instead of true knowledge, da'at becomes lies. And what I mean by that is, remember, we have wisdom and understanding, and then da'at forming a bridge over the abyss. You can fall into the abyss if you try to cross and cling onto your ego identification. You can fall in, and we'll talk about what it means to fall into the abyss in just a minute. But that's what can cause it. What can also cause it is if you haven't properly integrated Bina and Chokhmah. You can think of the bridge becoming unstable and cracking and then shattering and you falling down. And what that means is that some people will try and cross the abyss and reach the divine substratum of reality, but some people will just try and do it through Bina, which is just understanding, which is like understanding reality formally and mathematically, but having no direct experience of it. Then other people will do the exact opposite. They'll have direct experiences of reality in terms of altered states of consciousness, etc., but they won't have any understanding of it. And so that's what it means to not be properly integrated. And so if you haven't properly integrated it, you can also fall into the abyss. So if that occurs, something happens. Keter, which is normally unity, becomes division. Chokhmah, which is wisdom, becomes confusion. Bina, which is understanding, becomes illusion. And da'at becomes lies. Now, the thing is that most people don't know that this occurs. Because you believe the lie. You fall for the illusion. And so a lot of people will try and cross the abyss and think that they have. Because they're buying into the lie, they're buying into the illusion. Now, if you fall into the abyss, you land into the tree of death. We will be talking about the tree of death and the klipot in a future video. But suffice it to say right now that if you fall into the abyss, you end up in the klipothic realm, which is the tree of death. And here's where it gets really dangerous. Now, you can work with the tree of death in a positive way. You can. But falling into the abyss and landing in the tree of death is not the way you want to do it. Because most people don't even realize they've fallen. They'll still think that they're working with the tree of life, but they're actually working with the tree of death and not even knowing it because they're deep in illusion and lies. They're trapped in a mirror of what they think is truth. Others do realize that they've fallen, and they like it. They can spiral and consciously choose darkness over light, cutting themselves off from divinity to serve their own egoic purposes. Now, once again, I want to make it clear, working with the tree of death is not inherently bad. It can be powerful, but you don't want to do it by falling into the abyss where you either think that you're still working with the tree of life, but you're not because you're wrapped up in illusion, or because you end up becoming, quote unquote, possessed by klepotic energies and then work towards your own self-serving agenda. And when I say possess, I don't mean like these are literal entities, but I mean the complexes in the unconscious that those energy spheres represent. So the abyss is this razor's edge. Da'at is the gateway, but it's a big test. It demands integration and disidentification with the ego. Full unity and of wisdom and understanding, or it can break you. So just remember, Da'at, in terms of knowledge, isn't just about knowing more facts. It's about becoming something more. It's about becoming beyond human, becoming large enough and strong enough to walk across this void without losing yourself. And the only way to do that is to integrate everything. Now, just one more time. You can see without Da'at, there is an abyss. There's no place or path from Hesed to Binah. When Da'at is there, a path does arise and you can cross. In order to cross, you have to make sure that you are not identifying with your egoic structure, your egoic complex. It's important. You don't want to destroy it. You don't want to destroy the ego, but you don't want to identify with it. It's just a part of you, not the whole of you. And also, you need to make sure that you are fully engaged with Da'at by truly synthesizing wisdom and understanding. That is the phenomenological experience of what it is like to experience existence, and the formal, rational, logical, mathematical understanding of reality. Both of these synthesized together into Da'at. In the Neogenian system, Da'at represents hyper-awareness. And in Binah, you're going to find metacognition and concept networking. In Chokhmah, this is where you find phenomenological experience, for those of you who are familiar with the Neogenian system. If any of that fails, you will fall into the abyss and end up in the tree of death, where Keter transforms to division, Chokhmah transforms to confusion, and Binah transforms into illusion. Da'at becomes lies. You may not know that it's occurred, and you may still think that you're working with the light tree, but you're actually working with the energies of the dark tree because you've engaged with the lie. Or you have just succumbed to the darkness and chosen the darkness over the light. And remember, we're all about integrating both in the Neogenian system. It's not that the light tree is right and the dark tree is wrong, or the dark tree is right and the light tree is wrong. It's about integrating and synthesizing both together. And we'll talk about the tree of death in the future. But I need to mention it now because we're in the topic of the abyss. There's one final thing that I have to mention with regard to Da'at, and that is its planetary association. Because you know, as I've shown before, each of these Sephira are associated with a certain planet. And so the planet associated with Da'at is Uranus. And as we've learned before, that in esoterica, Uranus is also associated archetypally with Prometheus. And if you think about it, this makes a lot of sense. Because Uranus represents sudden insight, revolution, and the shattering that breaks old boundaries. Like it's often associated with the Enlightenment, with paradigm shifts. So Uranus represents a flash of powerful, sudden insight, shattering of old boundaries, and a shift to a new paradigm. It's the energy that breaks open the sky, tears through limits, and reveals something totally new. Just like Da'at, Uranus is the force that pushes consciousness beyond the ordinary. And like I said, it's also associated with Prometheus. Prometheus is the perfect symbol for what happens when you reach that forbidden knowledge, because who is Prometheus? He's the one that stole fire from the gods. He brought divine power down to humanity, but he paid the ultimate price for it. Because true knowledge isn't safe. It changes you. It can demand sacrifice and risk. And Da'at is that fire. It's the spark of hyper-awareness. Now, in the future, you'll notice it's associated with Uranus. It's associated with Prometheus. And the Prometheus archetype is very much associated with Lucifer. But this gets tied in with Satan as well. Because remember, Lucifer and Satan are very, very different. And so we can understand Lucifer as being the light of knowledge, whereas in the abyss, in the dark tree, this becomes the father of lies, Satanas. But that's getting a little bit beyond what we're talking about here today. I just wanted to kind of give you a preview to connect that, to see the different connections between Da'at, the abyss, Uranus, Prometheus, a fall. All of this comes together in Da'at. Da'at is arguably the most important to understand. And it's not even one in its own right. It's one that develops when integration is achieved. So what I want to talk about today, too, is not just about Da'at and the abyss. But you'll notice, so we've understood, we've explored all the primary Sephirot on the Tree of Life. We've gotten a very general overview of them. And remember, like I said, we're going to go from generalization to more and more concrete. And so what we want to know is how specifically does the Tree of Life apply to the soul? And you've gotten some preview of that with regard to, like, knowledge and wisdom and understanding and achieving higher states of consciousness. But I want to look at it in terms of specifically how the Kabbalistic system describes the Tree of Life in terms of the soul. Okay, so that's what we're going to do now. And this is in preparation for next week, because next week we're going to take everything that we learned today and before and tie it together into the inner star model of the Tree of Life and show how it all fits in with the Neogenian system and inner star actualization, because we're going to apply it directly to the soul, a zeta, an eternal mind. But let's take a look at how, because remember, the Tree of Life is a framework. And how does it apply to the soul? Let's take a look right now. This is how it applies in Kabbalistic terms. All right. So we're going to go even deeper here into the soul itself, because the tree can be used as a map of the soul. Move this out of the way. Okay. So this is the exact same diagram. It's just different things are highlighted on here. Okay. So this is the Tree of Life in terms of the parts of the soul understood in the Kabbalistic framework. You'll see what I mean in just a moment. Let's start at the top. At the very top here is what's called the Yechida. And the Yechida is associated with Keter or Keter or Yechida. The Yechida is associated with Keter. So what the Yechida is it's your eternal self, your higher self. It's the part of you that is eternal, pure unity, pure being. The higher self in the Neogenian system, this is the inner star. That's what the Yechida is. Now, right below that, into Chokhmah, we have the Chia. The Chia, or Kia, just call it Kia, or Chia. What this is, it's associated with Chokhmah, and it's basically your true will. It's your true purpose. It's the drive inside of you that compels you to become more than just human. The authentic fire that urges you to evolve, to expand, to become who and what you were meant to be. It's what pushes you toward the infinite. In the Neogenian system, this is the power self. For those who are familiar with the Neogenian system, the Chia is the power self. Now, real quick, if you're not super familiar, you might be wondering, well, wait a minute. How come the Yechida is associated with Keter and the Chia is associated with Chokhmah? Remember that the tree of life is simply a framework. And you can think of the tree of life as a system of filing cabinets. That's what the different sephirot are. They're just like different drawers in filing cabinets. And so it's like, okay, where are we going to put the Yechida, the eternal self? That goes in the Keter drawer. Where are we going to put the Chia, the urge to become more than human? That goes into the Chokhmah drawer. It's simply a way of organizing concepts. The reason why this is important is because you're installing this conceptual key in your mind and in your soul to forge a connection between your unconscious and conscious mind. And also, by the way, you don't have to memorize all this. You can if you want. It would be good if you did, but you don't have to. Basically, what I'm doing with all of this is showing you the Kabbalistic framework so that we can then finally put it in the terms of the inner star actualization. That's why I'm saying, like, the Yechida, that's the inner star. The Chia, that's the power self. We're putting all of these things in terms that we're familiar with and that we can understand later. But it's good to have this root and understand where it's all coming from. So then in Binah is what's known as the Neshama. So the Neshama is essentially the part of you that is connected to divinity. It's basically like deep, the deep intuitive drive to connect to the eternal realm. It's the truth behind, it's the higher mind. It's the transpersonal mind. So, now this can be slightly confusing, but all these here at the top, this whole portion of the supernals is also known as the Neshama. So yes, the Neshama is associated with Binah, but the entire thing is also called the Neshama. Because you have the Yechida, which goes to the Kia, which goes to the Neshama. And then so in Binah, you kind of have all of it together. So essentially, this triad at the top is also just known as the Neshama. And altogether, you'll notice that theme of it being the higher mind, the core of our inner star, the pull to become something greater and higher and beyond. That's what the Neshama is. So this is what's driving us to divinity. So we then go lower here, down the tree. And in this section is known as the Ruach. The Ruach, or Ruach, you can just say Ruach, doesn't matter how you pronounce this stuff, The Ruach is composed of Gevurah, Chesed, Tiferet, Netzach, and Hod. And this represents ego consciousness. All of this middle act portion of the tree is ego consciousness. It's your ability to choose between right and wrong, your abilities to make intellectual decisions, your ability to make feeling-based decisions, emotional drive, and have it all come together in the center where your ego organizes all these different drives together. So the Ruach is ego consciousness. That's what the Ruach is. It's ego consciousness. So the Ruach is ego consciousness, and it has all of these so you see it's very different from the Neshama. The Neshama is not ego consciousness. And by the way, you can see that also we have Da'at here in the center, always bridging the two. But that's neither here nor there. But there's a deeper descent known as the Nefesh. The Nefesh is Yesod. And so what is the Nefesh? The Nefesh is basically your personal unconscious. It's your instincts. It's your desires, your desire to it's your instincts to survive, sexual instincts, raw emotions, as opposed to more orderly emotions. This, you can think of it as, yeah, it's your instinctual drives and the realm of the personal unconscious. That is what Yesod is. And then finally, in Malkut is what's known as the Guf. And the Guf is the body. That's what it is. It's the physical anchor that allows all this other stuff to be expressed. So, I mean, that's a pretty simple one. It's simply the body. It's so obvious that in some Kabbalistic frameworks, they don't even mention it. So you can really understand this as 4 parts if you want. The Guf, the Nefesh, the Ruach, and the Neshama. So you can have a real simple 4-part system. The higher mind, ego consciousness, personal unconscious, the body. If you want to get more detailed, you can look closer at the Neshama, which has the Yechidah, which is our eternal self, and Chia, which is our striving to go beyond human, or the inner star and the power self in terms of the Neogenian system. And basically what we're doing here is activating all of these in harmony. That's the whole point of all of this, is to, and that's why Da'at is so important, because what is Da'at? It's the integration of the other 10. It's the integration of every Sefirot, all the Sefirot. It's that integration. So that's why Da'at is so key, because the whole point here is to organize all the parts of the soul, all the parts of the psyche, all the parts of the mind, these are just different words for the same thing, into a harmonious whole, and that is represented by Da'at. If that is done improperly, and someone attempts to cross the abyss through Da'at, but is not properly integrated, or has not disidentified with their ego, they risk falling into the abyss onto the other side of the tree, which is the tree of death, and then unity, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge becomes division, confusion, illusion, and lies. Some people don't even know that they fell and that they think they're still working with the tree of life, but they're not. Other people like it and cut themselves off from the light because they haven't truly understood what reality is. They haven't really understood what existence is. And so they think that they can use this power for their egoic ends and egoic goals, rather than having the understanding of the totality of existence and the true divine will, and which is the will of the higher self, which is your true will, which is the will of your inner star. So hopefully that was pretty clear. It's really very simple. It's not that, you have the neshama, which is your higher mind, the ruach, which is your ego consciousness, the nefesh, which is your instincts and personal unconscious, and the guf, which is your body. And like I said, you don't have to memorize that stuff. No big deal. But it's good to know, because when we apply, what we're going to do next week is apply all this to the inner star model. And so you can get a really big picture of where everything in our system fits, like the inner star, the power self, the mirror self, the shadow self, all of these things, the collective unconscious, how it fits on the tree of life. And since you have the whole point of all this is to just give you like an idea of what the tree is, because most people just don't even understand what this thing is. It's a way of organizing stuff. You can use it to organize how reality is structured. You can use it to organize how your psyche is structured, but it doesn't represent objective truth. It's a subjective organization. Just like the word cat doesn't accurately represent the structure of a cat, but allows us to linguistically refer to the fluffy thing over there, which allows us to get along in the world because we've made associations. It's about making symbolic associations so you can connect your conscious mind with your unconscious mind and begin the process of integration. Why? To go higher than human, and so you can live the best life that you can possibly live. Because with all of this understanding, eventually comes with the understanding of how to manifest, how to engage in will forming. So I hope you enjoyed that, my friends. If you have any questions, put your comments in the comment section. I'm always curious to know what perhaps needs more explanation or whatnot. Let me know. Let me know what you think. Remember, next week, we're going to be applying all this. Finally, we're coagulating everything that we know into the inner star model, which is going to be our key model for actually doing personal work and working with it and understanding our own nature and forming that conscious communication. If you haven't already, become a member. It helps out a lot. We're having a members only video pretty much right now, which is about, was Christianity actually a Roman psyop? That's going to be really good. So check that out. Become a member. It helps out a lot. You can also check out my free downloads on alchemy and inner transformation in the link in the description. Check out my book. If you enjoy what we talk about here, I highly recommend this one. It's Psychogenesis, Self and Universal Transformation. It's all about inner star actualization, hyper-awareness, and will forming. And follow me on Spotify. Links to all those things are in the description of this video. A big shout out to everyone who supports, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, DB, Nusalina, Vuonli, Celsus, Chris Magistus, TDFD, and everyone else. Thank you very much.